Hey everyone, welcome to Paid Warriors Soapbox. As you know, the election for president in 2020 is a few months away. It's in November, and the candidates so far are Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Now, the Democratic convention is still going on, and technically at the convention they pick the candidate, but given that everybody else dropped out of the Democratic race, and as I said in an earlier video, the convention really is more of a formality when it comes to picking the candidate, since the primaries decide that. Joe Biden is the guaranteed nominee for the Democratic Party. And on the Republican side, well, there were a few challenges to Donald Trump, but really there is no way that any of them could have beaten Donald Trump, and that's because as in every single presidential election in which the president is running again for his own party, and there's a challenger in his party, no matter how bad the president is, he always manages to score the nomination of his party because the president by then has endeared himself to enough party bosses to sort of help control the system and stir up more support for him. Like, for example, President Taft in 1912 decided to try to run again for second term. Teddy Roosevelt came before him, wanted a third term, and so he did challenge Taft, and even though Roosevelt was a far better choice, Taft still won because he was the incumbent. Incumbents just for any office really, incumbent candidates don't really tend to lose unless you have term limits that force them to lose, or they just decide not to run again. I mean, it can happen. They do lose in other races, but incumbent presidents do not lose to challenges within their own party. It just has never happened in U.S. history. And an even more clear example of like who would have been the better candidate was 1976. Again, still Republican Party. Gerald Ford was running again because he became president once Nixon resigned. His challenger was Ronald Reagan. Ronald freaking Reagan. Ford won. He won the nomination. And a lot of people realized at the convention, they were like, yeah, we really should have picked Reagan, Ford is not the guy. But still, Reagan then lost to Ford because Ford was president, and part of it has to do with the fact that that upsetting the system by turning over the controls of the party like that, it's a little bit disruptive. But still, Trump is not going to be outed through his own party. But there are at least 3 good reasons why you should not vote for Donald Trump. The first reason why you shouldn't vote for Donald Trump for president this year is his tax cuts. Now, tax cuts are, I would say, in general, people like tax cuts. I mean, even if someone says they support higher taxes, let's be real. Well, if you would legitimately pay more, taxes fast, then comment below. Also, if someone offered you to never pay taxes again, and you decide, I'm pretty sure that most of you would take them up on the offer to never pay taxes again. Never. Pretty much all of you would be like, yeah, I don't want the government stealing 20-30% of my income. That's silly. So yeah, as much as people say they're pro-tax, I highly doubt anyone is loves paying taxes. No one is like, I love April 15th. I get to have the IRS threaten me with prison time to steal so much of my hard-earned money. Nobody is like that. Not a single soul. Not even all the weepy sad story. Not even all the weepy millionaires like the Ben Jerry's guys is really like to pay high taxes. I'm pretty sure of that. I'd be willing to bet on that. Maybe I would bet. Not sure. But anyway, I digress. So, tax cuts are a good economic policy in the short run, because that means that more people can keep their money and invest it into the economy. It's called supply-side economics. It's a valid theory. It works. But the problem is tax cuts have to be paired with spending cuts. And while it's pretty easy for a Republican president to push tax cuts through Congress, it's far harder to do spending cuts because every politician has some little interest that they want to spend money on. And very few of them are going to be willing to give that up to cut spending as a whole. So when taxes go down, but spending stays about the same, then the national debt skyrockets because the government has to borrow more money. So Trump's short-term stimulus that the tax cuts provided is really a long-term detriment to the country, because now our national debt has surpassed 1 trillion per year. That is terrible, because that means is that eventually people are going to want their money back from the government. Eventually. And so we'll eventually reach a point, if the national debt isn't taken care of, there'll be a point where paying the interest on the debt is the only thing that the government can pay for. Not the military, not Social Security, not welfare, not salaries for public workers, nothing. Just interest on the debt. And that is a future that I don't really want to see. And so that's why, so Trump's tax cuts alone, I would say that was a pretty bad move, because he didn't first cut spending or throw spending cuts into the same bill as the tax bill. That would have been a good plan. But I think Trump was just so eager to get the tax cut through that he forgot to think about the long-term detriment that it could cause. Now, the second reason why you shouldn't vote for Donald Trump is his handling of coronavirus. I mean, like, he went into office claiming to be new, claiming to be, since he's not really a politician, he has some new ideas. And what does he do when there's a major financial disaster, which was the economic crisis that followed shutting down the country? He decided to bail it out with government money, which is, the solution that every president who has faced a recession or depression has tried. Or most of the presidents have at least tried that policy. And with mixed results. And it wasn't even like a stimulus check. Like, as much as people like getting stimulus checks, that's not even really an applicable solution to an economic shutdown due to a virus. Because the main reason why things shut down is because nobody wanted to go. Everyone was too afraid to go outside, and so no one wanted to go out and spend money. Granted, there's online shopping, but still, the shutdown, the economic disaster is mainly because people weren't leaving their houses. So to bail out the economy like that with stimulus checks, it just seems kind of backwards to me, or not, at least not applicable. Like if say President Bush or President Obama tried stimulus checks with the housing crisis, that might make a little more sense, maybe, just maybe. But during a pandemic, when the main reason that everything shut down and the economy tanked is because no one wants to leave their house, what good is a stimulus check going to do? I mean, granted, it'll increase online shopping, and maybe that's for the best in the long run. Maybe online shopping is something that does need to be boosted. But still, the fact that Trump immediately chose the, spend the economy into recovery option that every other president tries when a recession hits, shows that he's really not a new face. He's nothing new. He's turned himself, like, President Trump had so much potential to be a new guy, to be a new face, to have the new ideas, and yet he goes and does what every other president does. And I think, and whether or not that's a good, and maybe that policy is a good option, but it feels almost kind of deceiving to me that he said he's going to be new and have all these new ideas, but he sticks with old ideas. Like, why, at this point, why should you vote for Trump as opposed to any other Republican clown? Why? Why is Trump so great? He's listening to the same advisors that other Republicans listen to, and he's doing the same. He's reading from the same playbook as every other president, which I think is kind of disappointing to me. And also his handling of states is a little tricky also with the COVID situation, because the states are so conflicting as far as their COVID policies that you'd think the president would be a little more strong-handed here and get everyone in line. They tell all 50 states, look, these are the policies that we're going to set in place thanks to the coronavirus. This way, we'll beat it. But no, he's kind of just left it all to the states, which seems irresponsible. He's the president. He's supposed to lead the nation through a disaster. Why? Imagine if President Bush let each state deal with terrorism differently. That would make no sense. And COVID also it's all a bit of it's another huge crisis that the whole country has to face together. And if each state has conflicting rules on how to handle it, then not much is going to get done, because if one state beats COVID due to their good policies, then somebody is going to have from a state that did not beat COVID due to their bad policies is going to bring COVID back to the states, and problem starts all over again. The third reason why you shouldn't vote for Trump for president in this year is that he doesn't have a lot of respect with foreign leaders. Now, he's elected by American voters. So on the one hand, you could say that only American opinions about him count, but he's still a leader of the country, and therefore he is the pretty much the face of the nation. He is who most people, like, both outside the country and inside, will think of when they think of America. Why? Because he's the president. He's the leader. He's the boss. And if he doesn't have a lot of respect with foreign leaders, that doesn't bode well for any sort of international treaties or deals or any kind of negotiations like that. Like, Trump seemed to make himself a bit of a laughingstock whenever he meets with NATO or with the UN. And that could be just because he's an American president and they want to rip on him. But really, he doesn't seem to conduct himself well compared to other presidents in the past. And yes, he's running America, so again, maybe it should only be Americans that should get to have valid opinions about him. But in times of crisis, like now with COVID, it would do Trump well to learn how to, talk nice to foreign leaders and how to work well with them, as opposed to just wanting to get his own way all the time. Because politics is, for better or worse, is all about compromise. It's all about trying to negotiate, trying to get along. But Trump acts like a bull in a china shop sometimes at diplomatic meetings, just going off doing his own thing and causing chaos and making a mess in a way by sharing out his own opinions and not really being that willing to work with other countries. And it really could come back, and for a dire enough crisis, it could come back to haunt President Trump if the U.S. gets itself into a mess that no one wants to help the U.S. out of because no one wants to work with Trump. That could easily happen. And I was actually legitimately worried, earlier this year, that war might break out with Iran. Not thinking that Iran could beat the U.S. in the war, but still, it could have happened, and a war with Iran wouldn't have been pretty because it would have roped in a bunch of each country's respective allies and led to a lot of deaths. And while I think the U.S. would have emerged victorious, it wouldn't be without cost, certainly not. And it probably would have made it would have made the already bad situation in the Middle East far worse. President Trump had no legal authorization to execute a high-ranking military official of a foreign government. I mean, it's not like Iran's protected by the Monroe Doctrine, which says that the U.S. can meddle in the affairs of Latin American countries and in Canada because they happen to be in the same hemisphere. Because they happen to be in the Western Hemisphere together. Iran's is far, far across the ocean, in another continent, and so assassinating a foreign general is not a good idea. Especially if there's the U.S. is not at war with Iran, and Iran is not covered in the Monroe Doctrine. Shouldn't even be a thing. So how Trump conducts himself overseas, how he meets foreign leaders, how he deals with foreign countries, it just seems very unpresidential to me. It seems pretty much illegally executing a general and not getting along well with foreign leaders is not a good sign. I personally want a president who actually works well with foreign leaders. That's all I have for today, folks. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and as always, comment below.